Hi guys, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And today I am going to be reviewing Boosh, The City of Last Chances by Adrian Tchaikovsky. So this is an advanced reader copy that was sent to me off of Netgalley, and so I want to thank Netgalley and head of Zeus, the publishing company, for this advanced copy on what a treat of a book. This book is, dare I say, magnificent. I love this freaking book. And, well, without wasting any more time,
Let's get down to business.
let's talk about the City of Last Chances. Now, so I am saddened by the amount of 3-star reviews this is getting on Goodreads, because this is a better book than that. This has some of Tchaikovsky's best prose. It has incredible world building, a real, just compelling story. I don't know, it is a slow burn, that's for sure, but if you watch my channel for any amount of time, you know that I love them slow burns, especially when the end result is worth it, and here it definitely is. In fact, there's a lot I think I would compare in this novel to Daniel Abraham, another slow burn author, his Age of Ash. Not the least of which, it takes place in a single city that is kind of central to the narrative in a way that it's really its own character. And so this book takes place in the city of Ilmar, and, you know, the eponymous city of Last Chances. And we learn more and more about Ilmar as the book goes on. Tchaikovsky is brilliant with the little pieces of the city that he reveals. He reveals different districts, he reveals different factions, he reveals different players from different sides. And the city of Ilmar was constructed, long before the city of Ilmar, there was the wood. And there's this big forest that when the moon is out, you can't see through, because the wood is like a portal to other lands, and you need a guide. There's these people in the woods called the Indwellers, and they kind of guide you through, and you have to have wards, etc., because if you don't, you'll get lost forever. And also, there are these weird, freaking creepy monsters in there that, oh my gosh. Anyway, that's right off the bat, you get that. And again, as the book goes on, Tchaikovsky reveals more and more of this city's past, more and more of this city's inhabitants and districts, and I think Ilmar is just a brilliant setting. This is a standalone novel, but I am super sad that this is a standalone and not part of a series. Though it is my fondest hope that hopefully Tchaikovsky will write some short stories or novellas here in Ilmar. So when we pick up the thread in Ilmar, it has been conquered 3 years ago. It was conquered by what is known as the Palasine sway. The archipelago of Palisand has decided that it's going to expand out, and it's going to take over pretty much any nation it can find to profit from it and to perfect it. The archipelago of Palisand has been perfected. They are perfection. They establish in each of their conquered cities what is called the perfecture, you'll read it as prefecture, like a bunch. It's the perfecture, because it's their job to perfect it. In fact, they've established, for all of this colonization or conquering, whatever, they've established the Temporary Commission for Ways and Means, which is a committee that is in charge of making all these places perfect, and it will dissolve as soon as that mission of perfection has been completed, and it's been going on for 500 years. That Temporary Commission for Ways and Means has been going on for forever. And so it exports these schools of correct thought. And so it's this totalitarian regime, basically, that dictates what the citizens of wherever they are can do. And there's these 5 schools of correct thought. There's the correct erudition, correct exchange, correct appreciation, correct conduct, and then correct speech, which is the one that no one else likes, because it is the inquisitors, the correct speech ones. And so they have all of these rules about perfect speech, the way they should speak, and they call them the PALs. For short. So the Palasine sway, they have their own language that is it was designed to be efficient. So it's this incredibly efficient, just terse, clipped language that leaves no room for kind of metaphor or artistic expression. And so, like, any of the poetry, like, that goes on at the academy, the school in Ilmar, like, none of the old poems or songs sound right when translated into Pell, because their language doesn't have the ability to express these metaphorical, beautiful ideas, because beauty, all that stuff, that's not part of the perfecture. They don't have time for that. It's not organized. It doesn't have order, and that's what the Palestine Sway is trying to do, is just bring order to the chaos and imperfection of Ilmar. And so the main thrust of this book is the occupation and the resistance to it. This book is about revolution, and about the spark that ignites revolution, and about the oppressors and their relationship with the oppressed, and the kind of mirror images we see a lot in both oppressor and oppressed. And so the various factions in Ilmar have all, like, it seems like everyone is plotting at some point to overthrow the occupation. And to throw the pals out and retake Ilmar for Ilmar. And so Tchaikovsky just drops us down into the middle of these people. The book is told from kind of a narrative distance, instead of just deep diving and inhabiting a character and look his uttermost thoughts and, you know, having that really, really limited third person. Instead has kind of this omniscient feel without being third person omniscient. Each chapter has a single POV, except for the scattering of mosaic chapters that are multi-POV. And those are more the third person omniscient, but it just kind of, it like head hops between the major characters in that scene. But otherwise, we get kind of the voice of a distant narrator, especially at the beginning of each chapter. There's kind of like, there's like a paragraph in italics that kind of introduces the scene later on, and first introduces the character that we're about to see. And I love these. These are so cleverly written, and they really serve to like ground you in the scene and what's going to happen, or the kind of person you're being introduced to before you're introduced to them. And then later, after you've been introduced to everybody, it kind of reveals some backstory or some lore that you wouldn't necessarily know, because again, we're not in their heads with them thinking about their past a whole ton. There is some of that, but it's not kind of the character-driven novel that you would think of with these really like these character-heavy fantasy books. That is not to say that the characters are not important, because they are, but these characters are often, they are vehicles for the story being told. They are vehicles for the themes being explored, while also being fascinating in their own right. They are not cardboard cutouts. They're not carbon copies of themselves. Each one feels extremely distinctive, like they have their own rich and fulfilling lives in Ilmar. Like they all have a history, very, very clearly have a history. We are just not let into every single thing that they've ever been through. Even from the first line, Tchaikovsky pulls you in. The first line takes place from, it's in the perspective of this priest who, he's the only one that can see his god, who he calls God, and he's the only worshiper left of this god that used to be a big deal, and now it's just him. And the opening line is, that morning God was complaining again because he's cold, and his priest Yasrik needs to find him a blanket, and that's how it begins. And so there's about 8 or so, maybe slightly more, main POVs that we kind of jump back and forth from. We have the priest, we have students at the university, we have a couple nobles, we have a professor at the university, we've got some thugs, we've got some sorcerers, we've got the innkeep, we have some of the members of the occupation. There's just a really good cast of characters in this that I love. There was never a character that it went to that I was unhappy we were exploring their story. And that's because of the brilliant way that Tchaikovsky just peels back like an ogre of the onion layers of Ilmar. I also really like that the chapters have titles. Like, I don't really know. Like, I like that. And I love Tchaikovsky's writing in this. I've always really liked Tchaikovsky's writing. I think he really strikes the right balance between flowery and productive prose. And here it's some of the best I've seen. And again, those openers for the chapters are great. I just want to read like the second chapter. Just how he describes things is just fantastic. The opening of that one. The sage archivist, a dignified old man, prosperous without being fleshy, because the Palatine valued moderation in all things save ideology. Someone people felt they could confide in, so that when their doors were kicked in and they were taken off for re-education, it always came as a surprise. A dagger of ambition in the sheath of a generous uncle with a pocket full of sweets. That is such a great descriptor of this freaking, like, he's like the second in command there of the Palatine occupation in Ilmar. And it's just so good. So many times, Tchaikovsky just has just great passages. I wish I was someone who marked quotes more, because there are just so many great turns of phrase. There's a section where a guy is trying to have a conversation in a crowded bar with a bunch of other people who are like shouting, and someone is trying to talk to him specifically. And I just love the way he describes it. I mean, there's plenty more, but this is just another passage talking about this foreign barman who's like the bouncer, the thrower-outer, as they call him. That way he had of having his words reach someone by speaking not over, but under, letting the argument between Blackmane and the students and Stritzen close over his head like a hatch so he could speak in the quiet space beneath. I just love that imagery. Tchaikovsky is on fire as far as his prose is concerned in this novel. A lot of this is centered around the spark and what can unite revolution against oppressors. What causes people to finally, what is the final straw that can break the back of the oppressed to where they finally stand up and try to do something about it? And it is just such an interesting take on this whole thing, because Tchaikovsky shows us that every single faction in this city, including the oppressors, have different motives for everything that they're doing. Even though all of the oppressed Ilmar factions, all of them are kind of working towards and craving revolution, we see that they do not all have the same reasons for it. Some of them don't want to move. Everyone has their own timeline. For the students, it's always tomorrow. The students are always riled up because, they're the ideologues. The students who are like, they believe in the old poems and the old stories, and they, they're the youth of today. Like, let's throw it out. Yeah, they're the activists. And that's just who they are. But when is it actually going to happen? They go and they demonstrate. It's always going to be tomorrow. We see how concerned all of the different factions are with not just overthrowing the oppressors, but also what the established order is going to be once the oppressors are off. Everyone is concerned with being on top when the revolution is conducted. And that is just such an interesting thing to watch. You have these different factions. The students, you have the criminal element they're the resistance, but they're really the gangs. But then you've also got the resistance that's from the old noble families. You've also got the workers, the workers' unions who run the factories. And every one of them has a different idea of what the revolution will look like, and their own sense of timing, and who is going to lead the revolution. And so, as the book, you're constantly wondering, like, is this going to be the spark? Is this going to be the spark? Like, a chain of events is just set off, and you're just waiting because you know the spark's coming. And you're waiting for what tinder is that spark going to fall in and set ablaze. And the brilliance here is it's not just the world building, because the world building is brilliant, but it's just this idea of regular people in their circumstances dealing with everything that's going on. None of these are superhuman. Every one of them is believable. And on both the side of the oppressed and the oppressors, there are so many commonalities between them, and watching the different because the characters from all classes. We have some from the ruling class, we have some from the nobility, there's several from the poor, but then among the poor there's even hierarchies. Like, this is a book about hierarchies and how each tier of society has its own way of surviving, its own way of reacting, its own idea of an ideal society and an ideal world, and every tier of society has its own hierarchy. So among the regular citizens that are oppressed, well, at least they're not the Alorwin, who are the foreigners whose homeland was already conquered by the Pals, and they've, taken refuge here, and they're like the sorcerers in the alley and the pawnbrokers and the demon conjurers and whatever. And so, at least we can look down on them. And then the oppressed workers, well, at least they oppress the demons that work in the factories, because the factories are run by demons who are, like, even among the demons, there's hierarchy. The demons that work in the factories are ones that are sold into slavery by their own people. And so even the enslaved are enslaving, and the factories have to make everything, because they basically make a lot of things that, like, the PAL magic system is they do what's called decanting. They take anything magical. They'll take a god if they need to. Anything magical, any person magical, what they do is they kill them and then they decant them. They suck them dry and put them in these little tablets that go in these little batons, and boosh, it fires like a I don't know, it's like a flare gun, but it like fires a magic missile or something. And it's all just like, that's what they turn magic into, because magic is disorderly, so they make it into a little tablet or whatever. And as it goes on, the longer the book goes on, the more you see that both sides are trying to impose some sort of order. And both sides there's two types of characters in this book. There are the true believers, and then there are the survivors. And that's on both sides of the conflict. There are the people who really believe, and they're the ideologues, and they are the ones who are just like the gung-hos, and they're the ones that are out there starting the fires and making things happen. And then you have the people who are the ones who are going to survive. They're the ones who are trying to eke out whatever practical existence they can eke out in the framework that they have. The people who understand how to profit and take advantage of their situation. They know the words to say to keep the true believers happy, and we see this among the students, among the professors, among the Palatine sway, among the priests. Like, we see all of this, and I love the exploration of belief in a cause and the belief in words, and how stories and history can persuade and can affect the present. How important symbols are, how a token like, we're gonna march to the palace, and about how, like, there's this intricate dance between oppressor and oppressed, where some things are allowed and some things aren't. You learn very, very quickly, like right off the bat, you start to see how few of the perfect edicts are actually followed by the people whose job it is to enforce the perfect edicts. And just watching the conflict between these very, very real people caught up in this struggle. Like, everyone is like these small cogs in the greater machine of civilization. How they each deal with danger, deal with their situation, how they develop relationships, how they change, how they are different by the end of the book than how they began, how the true believers deal with the survivors, how people feel when their true selves are shown. I just absolutely love everything that is explored here. And I love revolutions, and this was just, it was just so good, and it was so different than what you normally read. This is a very, very different book, and I very, very desperately hope that a bunch of people read it. On the subject of people changing, like, we see how, once crap hits the fan, people who might have been gung-ho for something are looking and be like, oh my gosh, like, was this worth it? Like, we see why people stay in an oppressed kind of existence, because the cost of of rebellion could be incredibly high, and is what we're doing, if we even, especially if we don't even know if it's going to succeed, is that like why didn't we just chill out and kind of deal with this kind of stuff? We see how malleable rules are to the people who aren't the true believers. Like how the people who set the rules really have control of the rules. You can say whatever you want. You can say that they're unchangeable. You can say that these are the rules, you can't bend them. But the people that made the rules have the power to change them. And this goes from like the lowest innkeeper to, the person in the factory to people involved in the totalitarian regime, as well as gods themselves who say, like, this is the rule. Like, we realize that anything, like, they can change whatever they want because they're the ones that made the rules. And so Ilmar is a dark place, but what really makes you root for these characters is the hope that exists in all of them. Really, all of the characters have this hope that is either blown on and fed or, crushed under an iron boot heel. But it is just, it's the sense of hope in, and it always seems dark. It's not always dark in the book, but it always, it just feels very dark all the freaking time. And the last thing I want to say is there is a section of the city called the Reproach, which is the old city, where the old dukes all had their palace, and it got cursed somehow, and they moved it, and now it's just kind of a creeping section of the city that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, but no one goes there because it's super deadly. Guys, the Reproach is one of the scariest things I've read in fantasy in forever. It was genuinely creepy. I was reading it at 11:30 at night, and it is genuinely creepy. Tchaikovsky creates such a terrifying atmosphere and situations that, I don't know, he just uses a lot of really clever juxtaposition and imagery, and it's absolutely terrifying. And I don't want to say anything else, but you got to read it and tell me if you were creeped out by the Reproach as well. So anyway, I was probably all over the place, but it's a book about oppression, it's about revolution, it is about hope in the night, it's really just about real people coming together and about how life is hard. On the Kingpin approval system, I give this book a superb. This was a superb book. I loved this book. 5 out of 5 stars easily. Is it a slow burn? Yes. But you should know that going in, that it kind of has a narrative distance, but the characters are still interesting, and it's still an absolutely fascinating study in human behavior. And it's just so real how these people act. This is some of Tchaikovsky's best prose. Again, I've read almost none of his sci-fi. Almost everything I've read by Tchaikovsky has been his fantasy. This is an absolutely fabulous book. Please go pick it up. Please, please. If you like Tchaikovsky, don't even, just go get it. If you're on the fence, don't be on the fence. Get this book. The cover already is gorgeous. You absolutely should read this. Even if it is not your favorite, there is something new for you and something that can be discussed. Come and talk to me about it if you don't have anybody else to talk about, and we'll have a heck of a discussion. Heck, I'll have a live show if any of y'all read it. We'll talk about it after it comes out. Again, thank you so much to Netgalley and Head of Zeus for the advanced copy. Guys, that is it for me for today. Go pre-order City of Last Chances, and I hope you love it just as much as I do. As always, information about my Patreon and Discord is down in the description, and I'll see you next time, guys.